Hi, this is TJR,
And this is Robert Kinsler.
and we're going to talk about Chuck Berry.
We are, yeah. Because here he was, age 90, lived a long life, but Chuck Berry, arguably one of the greatest and most significant, important figures in all rock and roll, passed away on March 18th here in 2017. And I think everybody knew that this day would come at some point.
Oh, yeah.
But I still think the outpouring from everybody, I mean, Ronnie Wood, Paul McCartney, I mean, it just goes on, Bruce Springsteen,
Keith
Richards, just about every major rock artist that you can imagine, every legend. You know, I mean, he was the one that helped influence all of the legends that are so significant. I mean, he played a part in everything.
When we think about classic rock, he's the one that they all...
I mean, rock's first poet, first guitar hero, however you want to say it. I mean, great singer, great songwriter, and
I've always said rock's first storyteller.
And I agree, and poet, poet and storyteller. And my history with Chuck Berry actually goes back to one of my first concerts when I came of age. It's like, hey, I need to see Chuck Berry. I mean, even then I recognized, Buddy Holly may have been gone. Some of these other artists were gone.
Let me interject now. I just want to ask you, how old would you have been at that time?
I would have been like right around 20.
20, okay.
Yeah.
So you were already more in tune with history than I was at that point.
Yeah.
Because I was still being a very arrogant youth. I talked about this on my own video, on my own channel. I was still being this very arrogant youth, thinking, that this music was old stuff. And only what I hear now is any real value. So I was still being an arrogant little punk. And I think you at least were being a lot smarter.
And I think just because like a lot of my friends, everybody's playing Chuck Berry licks. That's almost how you get started playing the guitar. So I don't remember the name of the exact club. I think it was the country club in Reseda. But I remember it, long drive, and I'd actually just had a pretty serious medical operation. So I was in pain. But I go, hey, Chuck Berry's playing. So I still was somehow able to get up to the show. I'll never forget, I was in pain 7 feet, but this is still when he was young enough where he was doing the duck walk, and he was, he still had a pickup band. I don't know if he ever had a regular band or not, but that show, as I recall, his guitar was in tune. A lot of the problems that I had with him in subsequent times I've reviewed him and seen him, they did not exist that show, and that was a great show. A lot of energy, the crowd was into it. It was very exciting and kind of tapped into what made him such a vibrant artist back in the 50s and 60s.
And at this point, just in case anybody's watching and has never seen us before, of course, you've been a professional music writer now for years.
Yeah, for many years.
Writing for the Orange County Register. But at this point, you weren't a professional writer. You were just a fan.
I was at Cal State Fullerton probably writing, but but I don't even think I reviewed the show. I just had to go see Chuck Berry. And I'm so thankful I saw him then, because later in life I saw him, I know I saw him a couple times in Dana Point, I think, and then I also saw him most recently in 2010 at Hootenanny, and that performance was very disappointing. I think we'll show some pictures on the screen, but he cut off the performer that was playing right before him. He literally started on stage without him. The songs kind of would stop and start. He wasn't good anymore, but it was still Chuck Berry.
Perspective now. Now this is decades later.
Right, we're talking like 35 years later.
35 years later, yeah.
So he was in his 80s already, but I remember back when I saw him the previous time, I was right by the stage and he came out, his guitar wasn't in tune. Somebody next to me yelled, "Chuck, please tune your guitar," and he kind of laughed at it. I mean, he had this reputation for like, I'm just going to go out here, give it to you. And there's been a lot of articles written about that. I mean, I'm not telling anybody new.
This is nothing new.
And that's why he was, it's like, here he is, one of the most brilliant, influential figures in rock and roll. But he also, would publicly say, hey, it's about the money, or it's this and that. I think he was at odds with his own legacy, which was kind of unfortunate,
Yeah, and I never got to see him live. And had it been offered to me when I was at that age, I would have just passed it by. I remember my older brother, when I was around my early 20s, he wanted me to come see John Lee Hooker with him, and I was like, I didn't care. Now I kick myself that I didn't go. I kicked myself in the head. Because I was just a punk. Just an arrogant punk. But there was a time when Chuck Berry would give these great performances.
Oh, yeah,
during the early
definitely.
days of his career, he gave these stunning performances that created this legend.
Right,
And
exactly.
there was this time when he was. He was one of the originators of what we call rock and roll showmanship.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah.
Besides the way he played guitar, because he was taking the blues, and then he was adding, because he did like country music
Yes,
and
he did.
hillbilly music.
And hillbilly music.
And so he was adding those country and hillbilly licks to the blues, playing it faster, speeding it up, and in the process creating rock and roll.
Right, exactly. And just his moves, and he was so cool when he was young. He was just cool to look at.
Yeah, he had the moves on stage. Of course, there was the duck walk that he did.
Right.
And that was as outrageous as Elvis would be not too long after that.
Right.
Elvis would come along and begin to do the whole swivel hips and the shaking and all of that. He had his own style.
Yeah.
Chuck Berry had his style.
Yeah.
But Chuck Berry, this was the beginning of what we call that wild rock and roll showmanship that would proceed on with like Pete Townsend doing his cartwheels, smashing the guitars,
exactly.
Mick Jagger's dancing, which was very influenced by James Brown.
Right, exactly.
And
Chuck Berry was at the forefront of all that. I mean, before Elvis, before Buddy Holly, before everybody, he was pretty much like one of the architects of what we think of as rock and roll, and he was so influential because so many people that even perhaps arguably rose to greater fame, like the Beatles and stuff. I mean, very few people realize that the Beatles, the very first song they played at their first performance in America was "Roll Over Beethoven" with George Harrison on lead vocals.
Yeah.
I mean, and they did rock and roll music, and then you get their BBC, and they do a slew of Chuck Berry covers on there. I mean, you can see how much that they love the music and how inspired they were. But like you said, by the storytelling and by the music and the excitement of the music.
But this was, like I said, the early days. But then, somewhere later, decades later, and who knows? Maybe someone's going to have to explore this.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's been any definitive biography that explains why this happened. But in my video I mentioned there are some darker aspects to his character that I'm not going to bring up here.
Yeah.
I just kind of celebrated his influence on me as a guitar player.
And I think that's what's
and
most
songwriting.
important. Yeah.
And it is important. But we shouldn't. But there was a point where he stopped caring, and he just went out there. I mean, I know at one point he would go out. He would just travel with just him, his amp, and his guitar. He would hire a local band.
Right.
One year, that local band, I remember at one point that local band was Bruce Springsteen.
Right, exactly.
Before he was famous.
Before he was famous, yeah.
And he would just show up, not give the other guys any kind of set list.
Right.
He just started to play it and expect them to know what song he was doing.
And what key. And
what key he was in.
Yeah. And I guess, and even if for those of you that have seen that Hail, Hail, Rock and Roll, that known documentary he did back when he was 60 that Keith Richards was kind of in charge with.
Yeah.
Even that, I mean, his testiness and kind of what, like you're saying, some of those dark elements of his personality come to light there.
Yeah.
So it's like, here's this brilliant musician, this guy that was an innovator and so talented, yet it was hard to love. He was not as necessarily a beloved figure outside of his artwork, because his artwork, his art that he made was definitely will endure forever.
I agree. But it just, what happened?
Yeah.
When did he stop? Because near the end there, and I know you wrote, like you said, one of your review. You saw one of his later shows.
Yeah.
And you didn't mince words.
No, I did not mince words.
And I don't blame you. I wouldn't either. Because I said he was tarnishing what I wrote is I said he tarnishes his legacy every time he goes on stage. Yeah.
Because the last 2 or 3 shows I saw him were frankly just terrible. I mean, because like you said, the band, and no fault of the band, he had some good musicians with him, but they didn't know the set list, they didn't know the songs, they didn't know the keys. He didn't I don't even think he had a rehearsal.
He doesn't
with
rehearse,
him.
and he didn't care if his guitar was in tune.
Yeah.
And that statement where you said there was an interview where he just flat out, when he was asked, "Why do you do this? Why don't you care?" And it was like he said, "It's just business to me.
It's business, yeah."
But here's what I don't like about that statement. It's we have this attitude that somehow music shouldn't be a business, but it is a business, and there's nothing wrong with treating your music like a business. You can be artistic, but still treat it like a business. And part of treating it like a business is a commitment to your customers or audience, so to speak, your audience are your customers, a commitment that when you perform for them, when they've paid to see you, that you give them the best performance you possibly can.
Right,
Just like any business tries to give you the best service or product
Exactly, yeah.
in exchange for your money, they try to give you the best service or product they can possibly give you. The same thing. You try to give them the best performance you can give them if they pay to come see you. And I don't, that's what that bothers me about the statement. Well, it's just a business now. Well, yeah, of course it's a business, but you still have to deliver. And I just have to. It's like I wonder what happened. I guess we don't know.
We don't know. Yeah, and like I said, the first time I thought, oh, maybe he's not feeling well, but then as you do more reading, as you see an artist more often, and it's like, wow. Like I said, I just hang on to that earliest memory I have of seeing him live because that was a good show. I'm not saying it's the greatest show I ever saw, but he was still very good on stage and delivered a powerful show. As bad as I felt, he definitely lifted my spirits, which was great,
Yeah.
And, I know we both brought a couple releases to share, but one of my first time perhaps really, because Hail Hail Rock and Roll is very interesting. It's a great document about him and his life and stuff, but it was dark. But this thing, the Tammy Show, which is this early performance, I think from 1964, he does 5 or 6 songs on it, and he does perform live. He's not lip syncing, and it's great. You see a young Chuck Berry, you see him, still where he's obviously loving playing the guitar, loving performing for people, and that's that. And I know this is available.
What's this called again now?
And this is called the Tammy Show and the Big TNT Show, and he's on the Tammy Show. Chuck
With
Berry.
a lot of other performers.
Yeah, the Beach Boys are on there. James Brown is on there. The Rolling Stones are on there. Jan and Dean host a show, co-host a show.
Yeah.
It's just great. And
this has only recently been released.
This has been recently released on Blu-ray. I think there's also a DVD version of it, and it's issued by Shout Factory, and it's fantastic.
So if you want to see Chuck Berry in his time live,
exactly,
this is the thing to get.
This is the thing to get. Yeah, it's terrific. And matter of fact, when we're done here, I'll probably watch it again because it's terrific.
I would love to see it too.
Yeah.
'Cause I've never seen this.
Yeah.
And I never heard of it actually till you brought it here.
Yeah.
I never even heard of this.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, where can I see some great performances? Now, I want to share something here. I brought this, when I did my own video, once again, I just talked about his influence on my songwriting and playing, and a little bit about his legacy. And I said to anybody that if you've never really listened beyond the hits, the same songs, Johnny Be Good, Sweet Little 16, all you've heard is the hits and the songs get played in movies all the time, and you'd like to explore a little deeper, I was recommending The Great 28. There's a lot of compilations out here, but I think this is a good starter. You get 28 really fantastic tracks that get you started. There are, of course, bigger collections. There's the collection Johnny Be Good, the complete 50s chess recordings, which is amazing, but it's a little more hardcore, because you're going to be hearing things like, there's I think 4 or 5 versions of Sweet Little 16 on there. There's the demo, there's different takes that they didn't go with. There's the original, there's the final release version, and then there's even the speeded up version that was commercially released as well.
Funny.
They released a speeded up version too. So you're getting a lot of stuff there, but that's if you're more hardcore about it.
Right.
I have no problem listening to that stuff, but some people don't want to get quite that hardcore. So I recommend The Great 28 as well. And Robert, I know you don't have this.
Yeah, no, I don't. I've heard about it over the years.
I'm going to loan this to you.
Okay.
And I'd like you to check this out.
Okay,
here.
I definitely will.
Yeah.
And then I'll loan you the Tammy Show. So
I would love to.
Yeah, so we can both
that.
immerse ourselves here in
Exactly.
in Chuck Berry's artistry, definitely.
But
and definitely what I would say, it's kind of like what I put in my written review is like I would never dream of saying anything really wrong with him, just more disappointed that that he didn't care more about his performances, but his artwork, his songs, his style, what his influence and impact on rock and roll is like nothing can dim that. I truly think I think when that Voyager spacecraft or something went out, I think they had one of the Chuck Berry's like Johnny Be Good or something.
Yes,
so his music is going to be out in the heavens there. So that's
and there's
pretty cool.
that great Saturday Night Live bit back in the 70s. Yeah, because and if you don't remember, it's back when Voyager. When the Voyager spacecraft was shot into space and it was shot out there in case there was intelligent life out there in the galaxy and they discovered it, it would have
like human history and
a little bit of elements of human history enclosed with it. There were different things about human experience that were there, and among those things, among some of the music included was a recording of Chuck Berry.
Yeah.
And so it was a Saturday Night Live back in the 70s when I think it was when Jane Curtin was doing the Weekend Update back in the '70s, and she did some little story about how Voyager 6 was actually discovered by aliens from another planet, and they have sent us a return message, and the return message is as follows: send more Chuck Berry.
Very true.
Yeah.
That's great.
And so
yeah, I have to check that skit out. I don't recall that one offhand. So
you might find it on YouTube, hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully so. That's very cool. And one maybe way to tie this all together is Chuck Berry was working on a new album called Chuck.
He was.
And apparently there was, according to the family and some things that have been written, some work, I don't know if the album was completed or near completed, but apparently we are going to be hearing Chuck, or at least, hopefully
something.
Something from him of these final recordings, and I'm hoping that we get some great music.
Because it's been 35 years.
Yeah, I think his last album was 79, which is crazy to think.
Yeah. He didn't record or release anything anymore.
Yeah.
It is still kind of baffling.
Yeah, it is baffling.
I know he had a lot of legal entanglements, things like that, but someday someone's going to have to kind of write a definitive biography.
Yeah, maybe one of us
to better understand what exactly happened.
Yeah.
What exactly happened to this man.
Because I think even in his lifetime, so many people, tried to reach out to him and say, hey, we totally value and are appreciative for what you've done for us and how you've inspired us. And I think he was...
I'm sure there were a lot of major artists who would have recorded with him.
Oh, I'm sure there would. Yeah.
Before his death, there were many major artists that wanted to record with Presley.
Yeah, exactly.
It never happened, but there were many of them that reached out to him. Yeah. Led Zeppelin wanted to record with Elvis Presley before his death. There were a lot of artists that reached out to him, and unfortunately, the Colonel. I think it was probably the Colonel. I don't want to say I know this, but I'm guessing it's probably the Colonel saying, "You don't need that, Elvis.
Yeah.
You're bigger than them."
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah. Too bad.
Very unfortunate. Yeah.
At any rate, though, we do have the music, and if you haven't, like I said, if you're, of course, I'm sure many of you watching this are probably very familiar with the music, but if it's still something you've never experienced, all I can say is, go on Tidal, Spotify, Apple Music, whatever you stream on, and check out, compilations like this, and just try to move beyond the hits. There's quite a bit of great music to discover.
Yeah.
And a lot of good songwriting.
And I think I still have quite a bit to discover, too, which is about him, which is great. Yeah.
There's still huge amounts of catalog that even though I've listened to those complete 50s chess recordings, there's still a bunch of stuff out there.
Yeah.
That I have not heard. A lot of live stuff, and so there's still plenty to discover.
Yeah. Great. Well, anyways, though, hopefully Chuck Berry will live on. His music, everybody will be checking that out. That's great.
And so, hail, rock and roll.
See you later, everybody.
Bye.